Hello, everybody, and welcome back to NASMARB Garage Pass, episode number 2. We have just seen the Spiral 360 of Season 2 of NASMARB, and boy, it was a race for sure. I'm joined by the NASMARB analysts Luke and Sham. Say hello.
Hello, hello.
Very excited to be here.
And in today's show, we're going to obviously review the first race, talk about some of the notable matchups and storylines to follow going into race number 2, and then we will talk about our race to winner picks for next weekend's race. So, looking at the results of the second annual Spiral 360, starting with the two DNQs, we had Winx and Nugget who failed to qualify. Interesting notes about these two. Winx is actually now DNQ'd in 2 consecutive races if you date back to race 8 of last season, so a bit of a tough start now to this season for the Misfortune Racing driver. And Nugget actually is now going to be coming off of their first career DNQ, as they were one of a few drivers who did not DNQ at all last year, so a tough start for that 2-car rookie team. Finishing in 18th was the reigning winner of this race, Prime. Again, a new driver at a new team, and he had a really tough race. Same goes for Spitzer. He's obviously on the same team, but he finished in 17th. Just really didn't have the speed in that car all race long. Confetti was kind of just put in a tough group, finished 16th, had to face his teammate Sal, who went on to have a great race after defeating Confetti in the group stage. Kuz Motorsports really struggled, as Mozilla was their leading driver of the two, finished in 15th. Earl finished in 14th and was the lowest finisher of the Red Pandas racing cars. Streamer finished 13th in this race, and what is statistically his worst track this season, or in his career. Jack Tato finished in 12th after being a top 5 seed. Woodpecker finished in 11th. And to the top half of the standings from this race, we have Bloodstorm, who finished in 10th. Electro was a top 3 seed and finished in 9th. Murakami in 8th. The pole sitter Steve finished in 7th, marking just the second time ever that the number 1 seed did not make the final 6. And the last time that happened was the last race we ran, when Earl had that happen to him in race number 8 of last year at Mayhem Super Speedway. Sal finished in 6th. Oak, our reigning champion, finished in 5th, bettering his performance from this race last year, in which he didn't qualify, by 14 positions. Quilla finished in 4th. Piper finishing in 3rd, making the final in her first career race. Lemon Drizel finished in 2nd, and Neptune, out of nowhere, 19th last season in the points, and he is guaranteed to race for a championship in the playoffs of NASMARB Season 2. So it was a crazy race. Luke, we'll start out with you. What was the first thing that stood out to you from this race at Spiral Speedway?
Well, the first thing that I wanted to touch upon, and I think this is probably something that everyone is going to be also talking about, is the rookie driver Piper kind of exceeded expectations, in my opinion. I thought that with a new driver, rookie driver, making her first career start in the series, I felt like there wasn't going to be a lot much to write home about for Piper, but honestly speaking, Piper even making just the final round in her first career start really turned a lot of heads and was really battling a lot with her teammate Drizel. I think after this first race, it seems as though that Drizel and Piper might be the two better drivers of Red Pandas Racing, and I'm very excited to see how they're going to duke it out the rest of the time here.
Yeah, I gotta agree. It was a really great race by Piper, matching up with Quillo in the first round. As you saw there, the third and fourth placement. They were in the starting heat together and obviously both made it through. But then in the final 6, they both had a really good heat together that went back and forth each point, and I was pretty impressed with that. It was a good heat.
Yeah, I didn't know, Luke, you were very concerned with the decision by Red Pandas Racing to bring a 4th driver in, but like you said, Piper finishing in 3rd, 2nd on the team, with the other two, besides Drizel and Piper, finishing outside of the top half. So certainly an impressive start to Piper's career. Sham, what did you see in this race?
I was pretty impressed by Sal's performance. He only qualified near like the middle of the pack, but I feel like he actually raced pretty well. I think it was in the first heat. He was the second to qualify over his teammate Confetti, but then he had that really good race against Giselle later on, where even though he was like racing around the first turn and ended up tumbling, he still made it pretty close against Giselle, who for the most part is a lot better driver than he is. So I was pretty impressed by Sal that he was able to race that well.
Yeah, something to interesting to note. I think after looking over this race, it seems very clear that the inside line was the preferred lane to go. However, it wasn't the case all the time. Funny thing you mentioned about Sal is with him coming from a 2-0 deficit to tie it back up. His first points scored, he was actually starting on the outside, and he was actually able to muscle around the dominant Drizel to put up his first point in that matchup. So Sal, I think, was one of a very handful of drivers who was actually able to make the outside lane work in his matchup to at least come back from a 2-0 loss to at least tie it up to even have a chance to dethrone Drizel.
Yeah, definitely. It was pretty unfortunate he ended up getting six overall, but definitely a great showing from Sal in this race.
I think that's impressive too because Sal actually didn't make it out of the group stage the last time he ran this race. He finished 13th after an extremely close heat with Streamer last year. So definitely an improvement to start his season and a good start for the rookie team.
Another thing to note, I just actually talked about him. Drizel, I think from what we saw from him in this race, kind of cemented why I had such confidence in the veteran driver. During his matchup with Bloodstorm, he started on the outside, which again, one of the other drivers who was actually able to make the outside work. He was actually able to pull off kind of a master move on Bloodstorm, crossing him over to repass him on the inside while Bloodstorm still had the preferred lane by starting on the inside. So I think Drizel's racecraft in itself is improving a lot, and I think he's going to carry that with him all the way through this season.
Yeah, it was great to see that specific heat there where we had all the different camera angles, just seeing the beautiful performance from Giselle just racing around Bloodstorm to just it was honestly a really fast heat as well. Like he killed it through that those turns.
Yeah, and Drizel really throughout the entire race looked like he was the favorite to win the race. You look at the final and where he was able to win from. He won from the middle lane and the outside lane. Um, he had a great run at the one of the heats that he won. He kind of shoved Piper through one of the turns and got an amazing run to somehow side draft and get past Piper to win. I believe it was his second heat. So he was really impressive and I'm sure we'll talk about the final, but he looked like he was the favorite, certainly going into that final.
I think it was interesting to see a streamer. As we know, this is pretty statistically his worst race. But even still, on the two that he lost, they were very close. He nearly won both of them, but yeah, just not the best course for streamer this time. So one of his worst performances. And then just two more quick comments. I thought it was very interesting to see that Oak was able to dethrone Steve. I think it was during one of them he had a really nice turn and actually ended up passing Steve near the ending to steal the top six performance from him.
Yeah, actually, that was on the heat that he advanced. They were side by side going into the third turn, and Oak actually from the outside lane was able to make that pass. So really impressive for the champion.
Yeah, nice to see from him.
Moving on to the final round between Neptune, Drizel, and Piper. I think this is going to set the precedence for the rest of the season. These three drivers between each other, they really showed a lot of great racing, and there were some times where there might have been a few lucky breaks, but we'll get a little bit
Oh,
later into that.
absolutely.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think one major thing to note are the two teammates, Drizel and Piper, going at it. These two are obviously, without a doubt, gonna be uh, against each other all season long, and I think matching up a veteran driver in Drizel and in a young uh, rookie driver Piper is really gonna improve a lot of relationship between these two. There were at times where it felt like they were kind of going at it, while Neptune was kind of lurking in the shadows, trying to pick his moves and trying to weave around and steal that show from them. But I think that the matchup between those two Red Panda racing drivers are definitely going to be the highlight to watch out for the rest of the season.
Yeah, it was pretty obvious to know that Giselle would have been able to make it into the finals. He had a really good beginning of the course. It was pretty obvious. But very interesting to see how well Piper ran through that. Obviously, as stated, Woodpecker and Earl, their teammates, weren't even in the top half. And Piper's first ever time racing, they actually did very well. So, yeah, I'm uncertain if they will be the now number 2 driver for Red Panda, but definitely a good early performance. And then obviously we got to move over to our winner Neptune over here. I mean, I will say even though I picked Neptune, I was a little uncertain because of just how poor he did in the actual races both times. But I am very happy to see that he was able to win the race. But as it's pretty obvious, a few of those were pretty lucky actions to actually end up sniping the win.
Well, there is a famous quote in racing, and it's "I'd rather be lucky than good," and that's certainly played out for Neptune in the final.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, he did win at least one of those heats just by himself, but two of those were the bump over where he blocked on the inside and then ended up getting bumped over. I mean, you could say it's luck, or you could say that it was somehow strategical, I guess, because like Neptune was the lead runner in that, so by blocking, he was able to then just stop the next person behind him, but pretty ballsy move to assume that he would then get bumped over the course.
And this is not in any way to, for any of the fans out there, to discredit Neptune. I do believe that he did earn his spot into the finals. Yeah, some things kind of played into his way a lot of the time in the finals, but I think Neptune really surprised me personally. Going into the season, Neptune was pretty much not on anyone's radar, I think, after his performance last season. But as Sham stated, very exceptional in qualifying, just cannot figure it out in the races. But uh, first race of the season, able to hit the nail in the coffin and go out and win the race. And now he's going to have a shot at a championship later on in the year. So will this be the turnaround for Neptune, as a lot of fans have been hoping for him?
Yeah, as a season one Neptune fan, I'm already very impressed with how he's done, and I'm excited to see what he does in the rest of the season.
So, looking back on our analysts' race one winner picks, starting with the underdogs, Luke, you had Earl. What did you see from Earl in this race?
Yeah, unfortunately, not much to write home about for Earl. I guess I kind of expected just a tough matchup for Earl. Um, what I view from Earl is he's consistent where it counts. There's a lot of debate going on whether how good he is compared to the rest of his teammates, and obviously him being fourth best out of the four teammates is not a good look for Earl. But there's a lot of potential I see in him. It's just this probably was not one of his better tracks, but I do believe that he could bounce back within the next coming races.
I also think it's worth noting for Earl, boy, he had a tough draw. He was in Group 4, and he was going against arguably the best driver in the history of the sport with Lemon Drizel, and he was facing off against the champion Oak, who also made it in the final six. He faced the finishers who were second and fifth in this race in his group. So it was a tough ask to get Earl out of that first round.
And even still, he was the second place of the six eliminated in the first round, so not even that bad.
Yeah, maybe just a little bit of a bad matchup in race number one for Earl. So we got to go to it, Sham. I know you don't want to talk about it,
Yeah.
but your underdog pick was Winks. Unfortunately, Winks failed to make the race.
Yeah, really unfortunate from Winks. Just both of their laps in the qualifying were not great, even slightly. They were kind of out of it, like, from the get-go. It was, because once it came down to the ending, it was just Spitzer or Nugget, so pretty unfortunate for Winks. But I feel like they can step it up, even though this was, it was kind of a fringe pick because of the Spiral Speedway. It's They was very inconsistent from the last two race 1 and 2, but I'm hoping for better days for Winks.
Absolutely. And it, for Winks, he holds the track record there, so it's a little surprising to see him not qualify because he set that track record in qualifying for the Spiral 360 last year. If there's a silver lining to the scenario for Winks and even for Nugget as well, both of the drivers who missed the first race last season made the playoffs, and obviously one of them went on to win the championship. So it's not over for those two drivers down at the bottom of the standings.
Yeah, not at all.
For your favorites, Luke, you went with Electro. Boy, he looked like a genius early with his third place qualifying, but he ended up finishing ninth in this race.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised as what's interesting thing to note is that in his round one matchup, he was paired up against his teammate Streamer, and it looked like those two were kind of going at it for a bit. Streamer kind of cut him off during the first race in the matchup, allowing Woodpecker to sneak by and qualify first. But Electro still was able to get around Streamer into the next race and into the next round. But just being paired up against Quillo, I figured that Electro would have had a pretty easy qualifying effort, but I guess not. This is definitely one of Quillo's better tracks, and Quillo was able to showcase that and was able to take out Electro out of the running.
Yeah, and Quillo has now finished second and fourth in the two Spiral 360 races. So again, maybe a bit of a tough matchup there to get in the second round for Electro. I'm glad that you brought up the teammates too. That was something I wanted to touch on just quickly here. Is that we had a lot of teammates face off in this race, with Fortune Racing being in the same group, Obi Racing was in the same group, and then we also saw two Red Pandas Racing drivers with Piper and Woodpecker in the round of 12 face off. So maybe also something to watch going forward with the teammates. And man, I didn't think we were going to be doing this early, but we got to say congratulations, because we have a correct winner pick early in the season, first race. Sham, your favorite to win was Neptune. We questioned it.
Yep, definitely.
But he did it.
He did it. I mean, I was also slightly questioning it, but I still had to believe in Neptune. I was so impressed by his qualified times. He just I tried to review from his races from season 1, and I think it might have just been a little bit unlucky in both of them that he performed so badly. But I was very impressed with Neptune. Like, obviously the ending was a little bit iffy, but at the run up to finals, he was very clean. I was quite impressed.
Yeah, and Neptune is qualified in the top 5 in all 3 races at Spiral. So
I think his average is like a 3.5 or something. It's insane.
yeah, he's got a really great average in qualifying there. So it was not a shocker that he qualified well, but he had not raced well up until this race. But hey, you called it.
Yeah, definitely the gamble pick there.
And off the heels of that, why don't we have you give your favorite to win race number 2? Can you get 2 in a row?
All right. It's kind of the exact same because my winner pick will be going for Jack Tato. Funny enough for Jack Tato in season 1, obviously he did not do very well, but funnily enough, his 2 races that he killed it was this one, the Hyper Speedway. He finished in 3rd and 4th and had pretty decent qualifying in the first one. So I think he has a chance to do it, especially because I was pretty impressed with his Spiral qualifying. Usually he's not that great there, so I thought he might be like a 16 or a 17, but he was actually in the top 5. So that makes me a lot more confident in this Jack Tato winner pick.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting pick. It seems like you're going again with somebody who really good in qualifying, but Jack Tato has been actually great in the race as well. Like you said, finishing 3rd and 4th. Jack Tato actually scored more than half of his overall points in just those 2 races, with 64 points in those 2 races combined. So out of 125 total. So a really impressive run, but we'll see if he can get 2 steps higher than he was last year in this race.
Yeah, that's a big reason why I'm picking him for this race, because if there's one to pick him for, it's definitely this one.
Certainly. And Luke, who do you have as your favorite to win this race?
Well, I think you'd be kind of silly to not have this guy on your roster, but honestly, Lamont Drizel, it's hard to bet against him. He showcased that this past race, making it once again to the final round and having a decent shot at winning in the first race of the season. Drizel is an overly dominant driver. He almost actually he did actually win in the first trip here to Hyper Speedway. So I think there's a lot of speed under that number 3 car, and I really do believe that he's gonna get it done once again here at a Hyper.
So you've got Limon Drizel going back to back in the Lightspeed 400. Interesting pick. And another thing to note regarding Limon Drizel, a couple things actually, is that for one, his team, Red Pandas Racing, has never lost at this track. He won the first race here. Woodpecker won the second race at this track. So a good track record for RPR at Hyperspeedway. And Limon Drizel's got a ton of momentum where he didn't last year. He finished 14th, his worst career finish at the Spiral 360 last year. He's coming off of a runner-up effort, so he certainly has a lot of momentum going back to a track where he's had a lot of success.
Yeah, I can definitely see the pick in that, and I would not be surprised in any way if he does actually end up winning.
So now that we've got our favorites out of the way, and these certainly will have a great shot at winning this race, both of those picks, who do you see as a potential underdog to win this race?
Now, hear me out. What if I pick Winx, but again? Now, the first time I picked him in Spiral, it was kind of a fringe pick. I wasn't certain. But this one, I actually believe in because, funnily enough, he has it 1 point under Jack Tato in both of them. He finished 4th and 5th with pretty good qualified times as well. So, along with the fact that he just DNQ'd, I feel like Winx himself will be like, dang, I really got to step it up, and he might have a really good race here.
Boy, I think every single Winx fan out there was praying that you didn't say Winx again, but there you are. You went for it, and hey, we'll see. Maybe he can make the race this time around.
Hopefully, but it'd be pretty embarrassing if he doubled DNQs.
He certainly has had speed at Hyperspeedway. If I'm not mistaken, he actually won the pole for this race last year.
Yeah, that is true.
So he's definitely shown speed at this track, and maybe a bounce back after, like we said, missing the last 2 regular season races now in a row after qualifying for all 7 to start his career. Luke, who do you have as your underdog winner?
Well, I actually did touch upon him earlier on in this segment, so I'm actually gonna bring him up again as my underdog pick. I got my eyes on Sal this time around. Yeah, so Sal's race here at a Spiral, coming out of that 2-0 deficit again, like I mentioned, going up against the one of the better drivers of the series in Drizel, coming up to tie it in a 2-2 to put it into a 5th race, and even pulling off a bit of a smart move. Drizel did have a run on him on the left hand side, but Sal made up a very good strategic block on Drizel to stall himself and Drizel, preventing a Drizel win, possibly going into another a race to where Sal had another chance to win. Unfortunately, it didn't come to fruition and Sal was eliminated. However, that doesn't mean that I'm not keeping my eye on him. Looking back at his stats on this track, Sal has qualifying efforts of 9th and 3rd here at Hyper, and finishes of 11th and 6th as well back in last season. Now, if there's anybody who I believe who could steal the show, I believe it's Sal. And with his improved performance, from what I'm seeing to start off this next season, I believe he's got a real shot at possibly improving those positions even more, where he could possibly get a win.
That is certainly an interesting pick. And the last race we had here, Sal actually had 4 of his 5 heat wins at this track, and he also had a fastest lap in that race. And 3rd place was his best qualifying effort of the season. So certainly someone to keep an eye on as well. With that new team, performed really well in this race for Fortune Racing. We'll see if he can carry that momentum into race number 2. And with that, we wrap up episode 2 of NASMARB Garage Pass. We hope you enjoyed this episode and the first race of season 2 of NASMARB. Remember, race 2 is going to be starting out with qualifying tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern, and then the race will follow on Friday at 7 Eastern as well, live on MSPN. Thank you for joining me, Luke and Sham. Until next time, this is NASMARB Garage Pass.